Gilmore Girls was crawling with absent dads. It was like the dads were just like, oh, the child is there, I'm going this way. Oh, you're there? No, I'm going that way. Right? They were just like everywhere. Rory grew up without a consistent dad. Lorelai's dad was emotionally distant. He didn't really care about the mushy stuff, but he provided every other thing that she needed. Somehow, I feel like this show just glossed over the fact that these dads were not present. Like, this show just moved on as if that was not an integral part of their lives. And let's be honest, this kind of absence leaves a mark, and I think that it's worth talking about. Hi, my name is Susan. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're not new here, how is it going? Let's talk about Rory and Christopher. The on and off dad is what I'll call him. Rory's dad, Christopher, was not in the picture. It was like 7,000 miles out of the picture, and we see that he'll pop in occasionally. He'll come into the house from time to time, but he wasn't a real parent. A lot of times it's suggested to Lorelai that they stay together, become a family again, but this guy was just deceiving himself because he was not even consistent in their lives, and he was proposing the idea of being a family. Delulu. Anyway, we also see how much Rory wants this, right? Rory wants them to be a family so bad, and it just shows that there's obviously a void that she was trying to fill by wanting her father to be in their life, even though he had not been in their lives for a while. I can't fully blame Christopher for this. We see in the show that Christopher wanted them to be a family at the beginning when Lorelai had the baby, but Lorelai was like, I got this, we're too young, and they ended up going their separate ways, and so Lorelai took care of Rory alone. But we also see that even after Christopher comes from time to time to their place, he eventually leaves and goes to be with Sherry, the person he was seeing at the time, and the baby they had together. And this really hurts Rory, right? And I don't think that she was really able to unpack her feelings about this even on the show, but it was quite obvious that this wasn't easy for her to bear. Now we also see, like, even in the small things, for example, Rory's ball, Christopher wasn't there, and like it was a big deal to her that he wasn't there, and she obviously had like expectations of this man, even though it was clear that, hey, I mean, I might be your father on paper, I might be your biological father, but it's not just, the arrangement is just not, how you might want it to be. But there were still a lot of expectations that Rory had, and it ended up in her getting hurt because these expectations were just, not met. Simply put, I think this show just goes to show like the impact that the presence of a father brings to a child. And studies have shown that growing up without a father can impact a child's confidence, their decision making, their relationships. In a way, we see this with Rory, and we also see this with Lorelai in this story. Even though the fact is Rory was privileged, she had loaded grandparents. Her mom was also not doing badly. Her mom was showering her with a lot of love and attention, obviously, but the absence of her dad was still felt. It still left a lot of emotional scars with her. And we can also see this in the way sometimes Rory would seek father figures elsewhere. For example, when Lorelai got engaged to Max Medina, Rory literally throws herself into bonding with him. She invites him ice skating, and she even interviews him after the breakup. It just goes to show that Rory craved the stability that Christopher never provided. Let's talk about the feelings, the people that filled in as Rory's father. First of all, Richard. Richard stepped into Rory's life, and he became what you would call a steady presence. Once they reconnected, that's once Lorelai and Rory reconnected with Richard and Emily. And he provided, lots of advice, lots of support, which I found interesting because it seemed like this relationship wasn't there with Lorelai. And I think that Lorelai also felt bad about this too, because she could see a bond develop between her dad and her daughter, and she felt like she never had this kind of bond with Richard. So that part really hurts. I would say it hurts Lorelai a whole lot. Even though this bond was formed, it was formed a little too late as well, because obviously Richard's father was quite old. There was not exactly enough time for them anymore. But there was still something there, I believe, that was precious, the relationship between Richard and Rory. We also see Luke, and I think a lot of people like to call Luke Rory's real dad, because in many ways he was a real dad. He was there for the everyday stuff. He was there for breakfast, school events, her high school graduation. But even though Luke's care was consistent, there was just something that wasn't there. And I know that every single person that was watching this could see that there was a limit to what Luke could provide Rory. He was nurturing, he was always there for her, but they never could have that heart to heart connection that would have helped Rory walk through, the absence of Christopher in her life. Okay, Rory wasn't exactly the only one that struggled with daddy issues. Jess, the bad boy, also grew up with, a father that abandoned him, and he moved in with Luke. And now that I'm I'm talking about this again, it feels like Luke was everyone's dad, including Lorelai. Okay, because Lorelai needed parenting too, even at a big age. Anyway, we see that for Jess, this was the first time that he had like a stable male figure or adult male figure in his life, and he fights it because obviously Jess is rebellious and he doesn't want any form of authority right at that point in his life. And we see that, even in the later seasons, there is some progress. Luke actually influences Jess eventually and helps him to mature. And if you've seen A Year in the Life this season, this is one of the most beautiful things I enjoy about this season. Spoiler alerts if you've not seen this, but there is such a beautiful relationship between Jess and Luke that, is just so good to see, because they go from Jess and Luke always having to have conflicts to them being like the best of friends now. Back to Lorelai. Lorelai's relationship with her dad obviously was complicated. He was present and provided financial stability, but emotionally, it was just like a wall. There was no going past this. They always had awkward moments, like very silent car rides. And Lorelai was also struggling to recall like a warm memory at his funeral. And this just shows how distant they were. Now, if you're watching this and you have, an absent father, an inconsistent father in your life, or maybe your dad is even late like mine. Thankfully, I had a really good relationship with my dad when he was alive, and I still recall a lot of moments up till today. But I would say that if you don't have this experience, or you're struggling with filling that void, one thing I would just say is that you should know that you're not the only one going through this. There are a lot of other people going through this as well. You're not alone. Don't allow this define your worth and your value. You are a strong, powerful man or woman listening to this. And yes, it would probably have been helpful or better if your dad was present, but there is a lot that you can do and a lot of strength that lies within you that you probably don't know. There are two things I want to call to your attention. The first is sometimes when people have issues like this with their dad, it spills into other relationships. It could be like into their friendships or even relationships with partners and stuff like that. So it's something you should be aware of, that there's a tendency that if you've not handled that part of your life, in the sense that you've not healed from it, it could affect you. So you should work on healing that part of yourself. And secondly, you can build the life that you want from scratch. Don't feel like because you've had a terrible upbringing or you've had emotional abuse while you were younger, and because of that it would dictate how your life would go. Absolutely not. You can live a totally beautiful life even though you've had such an experience. Your mindset just has to change to believe that you don't have to necessarily walk the same path that you grew up in, or you have the same experience that you had while growing up. So I hope that this is something that you remember and that you keep in mind. Anyway, I'd like to know what you guys think. Do you think that Christopher's unreliability or absence in Rory's life impacted her in any way, whether it's professionally or personally? I'd like to know what your thoughts are about that. And thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.